Dying, death and bereavement. Not exactly cheerful topics of conversation for us, and not easy to talk about either, but that's something that the campaigning group called Dying Matters wants to change.
They found that only 1 in 5 of us has actually made any plans about what should happen at the end of our lives. Here's what some of the people they spoke to said.
Thought of my mum dying, first of all, it's just, I can't even comprehend the sadness that I'd feel, but it's because she talks about it openly with me, I kind of feel as though, okay, it's kind of like accepting it.
I think it's important that people communicate what they want before they die.
I think it'd be good to have a will, wouldn't it, and specify things like that.
You're to have a party, celebrate my life.
I think it's very important to tell people what you want in your funeral, because if you don't talk about it, how will they know?
I want glamour, and I want flowers.
I would want people up and dancing.
I'd probably get them to scatter my ashes at a bike race or something like the Tour de France along the Champs-Élysées.
It's very easy for you to say as a person to yourself that, you know, when I want to die, I want everyone to be celebrating, I want everyone to be looking at my life and what I've achieved. But if you don't tell anyone about it, people are just going to think that you died without any, you know, hopes for your death in a way.
Well, Dr. Mario Lacan is a GP and chairman of what's called the Dying Matters Coalition. Good morning to you. See, we're pretty squeamish about death, aren't we? 4 out of 5 people in England haven't written down any preferences about what should happen when they die.
Yeah, and that's not surprising, because talking about death is difficult, both for the general public, but also for some doctors. But it's really important that we do that, so that we talk and plan in the event that someone comes to the end of their life, because that helps doctors plan the care that they should get. So the family knows what the person's preferences are. For example, do they want to be cremated or buried? The practical side of things, but also the emotional side of things. You know, having the conversations around, I love you, or I'm sorry, or thank you for everything you've done. So I think there's a very strong case for talking about death and dying. Whilst it's a difficult subject, I would urge people to overcome their reticence. You know, death is frightening for people, and there's a sense of reserve. It's become a great taboo to talk about death, but I think we can overcome it, and I think there's a great sense of release when people do discuss it openly, especially if people are coming to the end of their life.
Well, I was going to ask you about when is the best time to discuss it, because often people find that if you are talking to somebody who's expecting death or who has a terminal illness, actually it is quite difficult talking about those things then. Is it better to discuss it when you're fit and healthy and can have those discussions without so much emotion involved?
It's best to do it as early as you can, because if you leave it too late, then the person who's dying will be suffering, they'll be in pain, and they may not be able to have the fullest of conversations. There's no great time, particularly right or wrong time, but I would say start early. So for example, if you're diagnosed with a life-limiting condition, now's the time to start that discussion. But actually we urge everyone over the age of 55 to make a plan, a simple plan. Think about the kind of care you would like. For example, if you did have a life-threatening condition, or you were coming to the end of your life, where would you like to be cared for? In hospital or at home? We know 500,000 people die in England every year. The majority die in hospital. Yet when we do surveys, most people say they want to die at home. So it's practical things like that.
Is it something about our culture these days, perhaps that we see so little death nowadays, and we sort of tend to tuck it away, that makes us so reluctant to talk about it?
Well, our research shows that actually many people think that death is a long way off, including many old people, you know. So I think people think it's not going to happen to them. The other thing is people think that by talking about it, it will hasten death. Of course, that's not true. But I think there's a fear of frightening people. But what I would say, Bill, is that I know as a practicing doctor, many ill people who are coming to the end of their life desperately want to talk about their death and dying and the plans they want. But sometimes the people around them shut them off, and that leaves the dying patient very frightened and isolated. So I think it does need courage. I think it's important we do it. We've got easy to understand leaflets on our website, dyingmatters.org, where people can get practical help about planning.
Okay. Dr. Lakhani, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. Very interesting. And we're speaking to Amanda Waring, the documentary maker, at 8:20.
The time is just after 7:15.